Joining us today are Hunter Lundy, an environmental attorney from Lake Charles.
Good morning.
Morning. Shawn Wilson, former secretary of the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development.
Good morning.
First question comes from Victor Kowalski of Baton Rouge. If you were to rank the top 3 areas which you would focus on during your time as governor to make Louisiana citizens happier and healthier, what would those priorities be? And let's start with Mr. Lundy.
Education, crime, and poverty. They're all linked. And so we can use education to resolve both of them. You know, illiteracy and incarceration run hand in hand. So we want our children to be able to read and write. We know that the brain of a child is 80% formed by the time they're 3, 90% by the time they're 4. We want to invest the resources in early childhood education that we need to do that. We have to attack poverty like never before in the state of Louisiana. No one wants to talk about it. I've been talking about it since day one. Okay. So if we attack poverty, we reduce crime. Most of the drug dealing and most of the crime is committed in impoverished, blighted areas. So those 3 are connected. I will attack them. We will reduce incarceration. We will educate our children. We will see that those that are incarcerated, when they get out, they have a GED, they have a trade, and they can make a living. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Well, Victor, thank you for that question. You know, a part of my campaign is to address 4 primary issues to make us safer, smarter, healthier, and wealthier. And it speaks to those priorities that I will lead as governor. First, to make us safer, we're going to be focused on public safety, dealing with the immediate present crisis in terms of crime all over the state of Louisiana, and make sure we're being smart and sustainable in those efforts. We're going to work to make our communities and our state smarter by investing in early childhood education and fully funding education to make sure that throughout the educational process from 0 to 4, as well as K through 12 and into the university systems, that we are making the right kinds of investments to build an economy, to build a workforce that are going to make us effective and smart and successful. And then, of course, being healthier. I'm committed to making sure that we maintain the Medicaid expansion, broadening that to ensure that we address the mental health crisis that we have, as well as other behavioral issues, and ensuring that women and seniors and children are well protected. Those 3 issues alone, working together in concert, will make us a more wealthy society. And those are my commitments and my promises, Governor.
Thank you.
We have 2 related questions on education, since most of you did mention education. It was also on our readers' minds. Dawn Gary from Broussard asks, what do you feel is the top priority for our education system? And what plans do you have to address that specific concern? And Dan Brandon of New Orleans asks, with the highly educated and local workforce being the cornerstone of attracting companies to locate high-paying jobs in Louisiana, and the years of neglect and defunding of primary and secondary education, what is your plan to increase the quality of both a high school and a college education in Louisiana? We'll start with you, Mr. Wilson.
Well, thank you, Dawn and Dan. You know, the first action is going to be paying teachers what they actually deserve. The legislature gave them a one-time stipend, and if we expect those teachers to do the things that we need them to do, we need to reward them appropriately, as well as law enforcement officers, firemen, and public employees. Making that long-term commitment, I am committed to fund them, index them, and ensure that we don't use them as a ping pong ball in future legislative sessions to address budget priorities. We also have to fund early childhood education and make sure that it's meaningful and make sure that it's sustainable. There are 159,000 children in the state of Louisiana that are working, that are studying to do better jobs at learning how to read and write and do all of the things we need children to do. Additionally, investing in higher education means assessing what we have in the workforce, building a curriculum that will train them for the jobs that they need and deserve, but also ensure that we're bringing folks to the state that will hire them and pay them the wages so that they can stay in Louisiana and not travel all across the state of Louisiana or outside of Louisiana to get good compensation for the work that they do.
Mr. Lundy.
Well, first thing is we're going to get rid of the LEAP test. I've said that from the beginning of time. Our teachers are spending too much time teaching kids to take a test, and they're taking them out of the classroom when they need to learn. So we're going to get rid of the LEAP test. Yes, it's about priorities. I'm the only outsider in this race. I'm not part of a political party. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a politician. I'm not a bureaucrat. But I come from a family of educators. My mother's a kindergarten teacher. My sister's a kindergarten teacher. So we're going to fund lower elementary. We're going to fund pre-K education like we promised we would do. So we're going to fund that education, and we're going to do it. We're not going to cut at the end of the term. We saw what happened this past legislation. What do? They always cut education. They cut health care, and nobody knows what's happening. That's what happened this past session. So we will fund pre-K to the best of our abilities and see that our children learn from the beginning. And on another note, I will undo what the Wagaspack Jindal years did to our UL system.
Our next question comes from an AARP member, and it's about broadband. Louisiana communities have been working at lightning speed to connect residents to the internet and close the digital divide. Louisiana is projected to invest $1.3 billion in communities across the state. As governor, how will you increase affordable high-speed internet access and continue the fast pace of broadband development? Mr. Lundy.
So Representative Desatel in Avoyelles Parish has made it his cause to get us broadband. And so we just got a $1.6 billion grant. We're one of 8 states in the United States that got the most money from this government money for broadband. So it's going into place. And yes, we have 17 parishes in Louisiana that don't have OBGYN care. You know, we have these rural areas that got to have this because we need to have telemedicine. We need to allow the opportunity to exist in every parish for women to have the right health care that they deserve. And broadband is the answer. And yes, as the next governor, I'm going to be the most transparent governor that we've ever had. So you'll be able to see online where the money comes from, where it goes to, who it's appropriated to, the timeline in which it takes to build a road or show up at an event, so forth. People in Louisiana will have access to that, and they can look at it from their household, and they'll know the truth.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
So the reality is the funds that we're receiving for broadband across the state is absolutely going to those places that are not served today. I'm married to a 23-year educator who understands firsthand the learning loss that we saw. I've got health professionals in my family that understands the importance of telemedicine and what it can do, and others whose business is based solely on the internet. In rural Louisiana, we have to make the kinds of investments to create the equalization in our economy, both from a healthcare and education and an economic development perspective. We know those federal dollars are coming. We support those federal dollars. And as a part of this administration that sought these dollars and were nationally recognized for our programs and efforts that preceded these funds, it's important that we double down on these issues. We've understood the implementation of broadband for decades in this state. In my department, we actually managed the state's first fiber optic network. In previous administrations, we gave it away, gave it to the university system as opposed to leveraging it. We've put broadband on infrastructure and across our right-of-ways. It's important for us to do it. We've got the resources, but you need a governor and a candidate like myself who has the relationship with the federal government to make those things work.
Thank you. We got quite a few questions on the state of insurance coverage in Louisiana, including one from Maureen Ferguson of Homa. She writes, increased insurance premiums, homeowners, auto, especially flood, are a major issue for all Louisianians. As governor, what is your plan to bring in new insurance companies and lower premium rates? Charles Colomb of New Orleans writes, how would you make it a priority in your first term as governor to lower insurance rates? Mr. Lundy.
The only billboard attorneys I know are the ones that are supporting Jeff Landry, and he's in hiding today, and he's not part of this forum. But I will say this, I've negotiated $10 billion deals, and I've negotiated $10 deals. I can sit at the table with any CEO of any company. I do know, having experienced Laura, Delta, Ida, Rita, Katrina, and helping businesses and churches and small oystermen, fishermen, everybody through these hurricanes, that we can solve the problem. And I'm not going to pander and be in fear of any insurance company, like some of these constituents of mine up here sound like they're in fear of these insurance companies. They're coming back. State Farm's already back in Louisiana. They're taking the market back. Some of the ones that didn't comply, yes, they're out of business now. So we don't have to be afraid of insurance companies, but they are going to insure hurricanes, and they're going to insure wildfires, or they're not going to do business in my administration, because that's what they're talking about not doing right now.
Mr. Wilson.
As governor, I will hold big insurance companies accountable, and you don't do it by bailing them out to the tune of $45 million when they've left Louisianians high and dry. I've got a college student at home, and we're paying insurance, and we see the same spike that you do. We have family members who've been damaged by hurricanes and have the same struggles that most of our citizens are facing. We've got to have a special session. We've got to address issues like adjuster accountability, creating timelines in terms of notification and information, and holding insurance companies accountable to make sure that they honor the commitments that you make as a premium payer. We've also got to deal with some common sense laws in terms of drivers and whether or not credit should even be considered when they make your rating and set your standard premium pays. The other thing you have to do is work with the federal government to ensure that the risk rating 2.0 has more transparency, that it's effective, and that it's balanced and is treating people equally. Somebody's got to hold them accountable. It's unfair for them to have done to Louisianians what they've done. And as a high-risk market, we have to address that. We have to grow the competition, and bailing them out is not the way to do it. We will grow the competition effectively and smartly, working collaboratively with insurance, trial lawyers, and most of all, the citizens of this state.
This next question, and it comes from C. Taylor from Folsom. What are your plans to address climate change and bring clean energy companies to Louisiana while holding oil and gas companies accountable for the damage they've already done? Mr. Lundy.
I'm all for the oil and gas industry, and we needed to come back, but I'm all about justice. If you mess up, you clean up. We've got thousands of canals dug through our marshlands that are contributing to the coastal erosion and the problems we have today. And so let them have their day in court, enforce it. From Cameron Parish all the way to St. Bernard Parish, they've got suits against these oil and gas companies who didn't live up to the law. And it was during the Jindal administration that they wouldn't enforce the law. And so let it be. If they're innocent, they're innocent. If they're guilty, they need to pay. We need to stop the coastal erosion problem. And as far as clean energy, I'm all for it. You know, we talked the other day about the green hydrogen that's taking place. You know, Europe is going to methanol instead of diesel fuel for the maritime industry. We're going to build methanol plants all over. Right now, we got a biodiesel plant, $1 billion plant going up in Convent. We got blades being built for windmills. The windmill bidding has already taken place off of Cameron and other places around the state. There's a project in New Iberia. Okay. So I'm for clean energy, but I want the oil and gas industry to survive.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Well, first, you have to acknowledge that things are different than they were 35 years ago. My father worked in the oil business as a kid. And yes, there were damages done to our state and our coast, and it's affecting our way of life. Just look at the Mississippi River, the lowest it's ever been. Saltwater intrusion becoming a reality to citizens that have never seen it before. The way you address it is you hold people accountable, and you do it in a way that's fair and balanced and consistent. I'm the only candidate that has a proven record of doing that. And when you attract new business, when you look at the green energy out there, the clean energy opportunities we have, you have to have the infrastructure to support it, to leverage our natural resources, whether it's ports, whether it's rail, whether it's the interstate system. Look at the LA1 expressway that we're spending $400+ million building today. Under our administration, when I was secretary of the department, it's to attract folks for those types of jobs that are going to be on the coast, for the jobs that are formerly in the oil and gas industry that we will now put to work using the same skill sets. It will also be an opportunity for businesses to come to Louisiana, invest in renewables in not just urban areas, but in rural areas to grow our economy, create good paying jobs, and be respectable citizens to protect our environment.
Thank you. Would you continue to pursue Governor Edwards' plan to achieve net zero emissions by 2050? Mr. Lundy?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes, environmentalists and industry have supported it as well.
Okay.
Now we have another question from an AARP member. Older adults are routinely targeted by scammers on the phone, the internet, and now through AI. Last year, nearly 45,000 older Louisianans reported fraud that resulted in over $43 million in losses. As governor, how would you enact policy changes and enforce laws that will protect our older consumers? Mr. Lundy.
Well, I would propose legislation to strict penalties of crime than anybody that's taking advantage of our senior citizens. We would have to do a better job of monitoring phone calls. We would have to insist on an attorney general to do their job. That hasn't been done in the last 7 years. So we've got to have an attorney general that does his job, that has a section on that he can prosecute these people when they're found. The local DAs have to implement policies against some of these calls. And it's been going on for a decade now. And so I would implement and institute and propose legislation to make the laws stricter on these people that are taking advantage of our senior citizens. And then I would have education. We got to educate and do it through the senior citizens and the communities service centers. I mean, we have senior citizens communities all over the state. We send people in there and we educate them to know a signal when they're getting a call, when somebody's asking about their social security number, somebody's asking about a question of their personal finances. That's a signal that it's a fraudulent call.
Thank you.
So it's about
Thank you.
education and enforcement.
Mr. Wilson.
Well, look, scamming citizens is nothing new. And this is another example, I think, where artificial intelligence has made it even more difficult for us to take advantage of the resources to protect our citizens, and not just our seniors, but our young people as well. As someone who really believes in collaboration and partnership, I'm able and willing to work with AARP and other stakeholder organizations to ensure that we're educating seniors and providing them the resources, in addition to holding individuals and violators accountable. These are examples of what our state attorney general have missed the boat on already. These are things that we see every season of hurricanes where people get taken advantage of. We have to be thoughtful. We have to be good in terms of making sure we're addressing consumer issues and protecting our citizens. And as governor, I will always put that first. Whether it's passing laws, making information available, creating technology tools to help individuals understand when a scammer is calling someone that's not identifiable, making sure that our seniors are protected, and working with the nonprofit and the faith-based communities and others that work directly with those communities to make sure they have at their fingertips the tools they need to protect themselves. And when they are violated or abused, we will step up and represent them and defend them as well.
This next question, it comes from Mike Perry of Metairie, and let's make it just a straight yes or no question, no commentary down the line. We'll start with Mr. Wilson. And the question is, do you believe Joe Biden is the legitimately elected president of the United States?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this one is also a favorite of ours. Maybe it could be something that you can answer quickly as well. Danny Garrett of Baton Rouge asks, other than yourself, which candidate do you think would make the best governor? Mr. Lundy.
So I'm sitting here on a panel. I'm an independent in this race. I'm not beholden to any political party whatsoever. I'm sitting here with a Democrat and 3 Republicans. But I'll say this, I plan on being in a runoff with Jeff Landry, and I'm working to do that because I am a guy, I am a David that fights the Goliath. And I agreed with Governor Edwards on some things and not on others. But the one thing that I agreed with him on is that Jeff Landry is not a good man. And we will be embarrassed if he were to be elected governor. And so any one of these people here alongside me, they're good people. Now, do I disagree immensely with the philosophy of a bureaucrat or someone who came out of the Vitter or Jindal administration? I sure do. And the attacks on that are made against my profession, I disagree with it. But I'm in a battle to slay the giant, and that's Jeff Landry. And so I'm the alternate candidate that you can choose. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
Well, Danny, thank you for the question. And my middle name is David, and I have a slingshot. And I'm going to translate for all of the folks that you just heard. They all are referring to me. I'm the only candidate that has 25 years of working in Democratic and Republican administrations. The reason I'm here is public service has been my ministry. And the reality is the extremism is too high. When I got into this race, I realized that there were no candidates that were in this race that I felt comfortable voting for. Not that they were bad people. They're all good people. They all have passion. They're honorable. But in terms of what the citizens need in making us safer, smarter, healthier, and wealthier, and toning down the partisanship and the extremism and the divisiveness to respect Louisianians, regardless of economics, regardless of your zip code, urban, rural, black, white, rich, poor, it does not matter if you care about people. And I've got a heart for the people of this state, and that's why I'm running. And so I respect everyone who puts their name out there, and I'm going to trust the citizens to do what's best and look at an individual's record, their accomplishments, and not the rhetoric, not the sound bites, but look at the policy, look at the person, look at what they've done, and then you will see who's the best candidate. And I submit to you that I'm that guy.
Okay, thank you all very much. And Danny, we tried. One last question from our AARP members. Older adults outnumber kids for the first time in U.S. history. This has great implications on Louisiana's critical services, like home and community-based services that help older adults live independently in their homes. As governor, how will you ensure seniors have more choice in where they can receive their long-term care, whether it's home and or community services or institutional care like nursing homes?
Egypt. He was 80 years old. So we have a productive society, and we're going to take care of our senior citizens when I'm the governor. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
If you want to learn about a community or a state, ask how they're taking care of their seniors and their children. Those are things I'm vehemently committed to. And as governor, I will make it a priority. I will make sure that the Office of Elderly Affairs that exists today is actually a cabinet member in my administration to communicate to us, not just to me, but to the citizens of this state and to every agency in this state government, the importance of taking care of our seniors. That's why you hear me talk about things like making sure communities are safer and that they're smarter to educate people throughout their lives, that they're healthier, to make sure that we have a network of hospitals and caregivers to ensure that individuals can age gracefully and independently and in a way that they can have some dignity and quality of life about themselves. Those are things that as governor, I will commit to doing, making sure that living in Louisiana is affordable, fighting to make sure that they're protected in terms of consumer services, as well as the insurance industry, making sure that we have their needs met. And that starts with having a relationship, not just with AARP that I've worked together with over the last 10 years or 17 years at the department, but for the next 8 years as governor, I will work and have an audience with them on a regular basis. And that's my commitment to the seniors and the families of Louisiana.
We'll move to our final question for the panel. This is from Linda Tootin from Ruston. How would you clean up our major cities, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, and make them safe to visit again? Mr. Lundy.
I looked at the program that New York City did in the 1990s, and they called it the Window Breakers program. And so they went after the young criminals. We have to reinstate our juvenile justice system. And that way they rehabbed them. That way they didn't become hardened criminals. And so we have a lot of 14, 15, 16-year-olds committing crimes. We got to reach out and get them. We can't let these older criminals groom them by giving them guns. And we got to go after these older criminals. So that's going to be a priority. And so we go after, we educate, we equip, we do all the things that are necessary for our law enforcement. I've said up from the beginning of this race, we got to pay our teachers. We got to pay our law enforcement. We got to pay our firemen. We're 35th on teachers. We're 48th on law enforcement and dead last on firemen. So if we don't pay the people that protect us, what do we expect the rest of the nation to think about Louisiana? So we're going to take care of the people that take care of us. We're going to take care of the law enforcement people, and we'll get rid of poverty. We'll get rid of crime, and we'll do it through education, hard work, and a strong, intelligent effort.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Well, to my neighbor in Ruston, thank you for that question. We're in the city of New Orleans today, where I grew up. My mom still lives in the shotgun house where she raised my brother and I as a single mother. I know what it's like to live in the city and deal with these crises, and I understand that it doesn't have to be this way. You need a governor that's going to be firmly committed to making sure that you're safe. And it starts with making the kinds of investments in law enforcement to be smart, to address these old issues in new ways, to make sure that we have systemic improvements and not necessarily target communities like the Attorney General has to have been derelict in his duties for the last 7.5 years. The most important thing I will tell you is you're going to have a governor in Shawn Wilson that will work with mayors and police chiefs and district attorneys and judges and others to implement justice fairly and consistently, to ensure that our communities have the opportunity to evolve and be what they want to be. But it's got to be a whole of government effort. It's going to involve churches. It's going to involve families. It's going to cause us to have to address the fentanyl crisis and the opioid epidemic in ways that we've never seen it. It's going to cause us to have to make the kinds of investment in quality of life and in government services to do a better job for communities, to be the communities that they can be with the leadership that they elect. And I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you.